Welcome everyone to MS Confidential. We have really interesting, exciting, provocative topic today when we're calling it I care, you care, we all care, and need care. For those of you who are new here, we gather monthly for candid conversations about life with multiple sclerosis and by default, other chronic illnesses as well. Today, we are asking our panelists and our special guest, Shaler McClure-Wright, what it's like to give care and what it's like to receive care. Our three regular panelists are all in various stages of MS, and our guest today lives with chronic inflammatory response syndrome. This will be a really unique opportunity for our panelists to engage with another fellow patient who now also carries the perspective as caregiver. So I'm sure many of you already know our regular panelists. We have the wonderful Elizabeth Jamieson, director of MS Confidential, former social justice attorney, artist, writer, patient advocate, and one of my favorite people on the planet, Kyle, and I don't say that lightly, Kyle Cronick. He is, oh my goodness, where do I begin with Kyle? He's starting the coolest business ever, and recent texts back and forth, he's just completely immersed in it. And this will be medicinal mushrooms for all of our bodies to thrive and survive what is coming in the future of our lives. So thank you, Kyle, for your services. He is also been a powerful voice, maybe not as much now on the MS Instagram community, but he's got a really good channel there. So if you want to check out his Instagram community, it's called @GottaKeepGoing. And last but not least, we have Annie Brewster, assistant professor at Harvard, practicing physician and founder of Health Story Collaborative. And if you ever have questions about the research behind the importance of patient narratives, both for patients and audience members, ask Annie. Narrative medicine is absolutely the future, and she just published a book on the topic called The Healing Power of Storytelling. It's such a privilege to be able to connect regularly with our panelists, and it's extra special to occasionally bring on a guest and hear their unique perspectives. So today, Shaler McClure-Wright, writer, director, former actor, can you say all my children? And depth psychology creative, plunges the depths of her own chronic illness journey through her work, walking the fine line between meaning and mystery through her piercing observations and self-reflections. I highly recommend checking out her recent project, Soul Chronicles, hosted by Health Story Collaborative. I'm absolutely in love with what she reflects on every time she publishes a new story or a new episode on Soul Chronicles. She joins us today, and boy, does she have some deep exploring that she's been doing lately on caregiving. Yes, she's a patient and she's been on the receiving end of caregiving, but now she is currently caregiving. We'll learn more about that in this episode. And she's working all of these insights into an ebook called When Caregiving Hits Home, Lessons on Loving and Unattainable Selflessness. Unattainable, I love that. And where she explores her experiences, and she opens with this deeply vulnerable paragraph, and then I'm just going to jump right in after this. She says, I used to think of caregivers as selfless, unsung heroes helping others with an admirable range of health skills, but I didn't visualize them as people with lives of their own and differing strengths and weaknesses. I saw them as somehow above all of that. Then, through an unexpected turn of events, I found myself cast in that role, and I panicked, wondering, how can I possibly measure up to those self-sacrificing saints? I like to think of myself as a kind, caring person, but life has a way of challenging our presumptions. And now life has presented me with an opportunity to find out just how caring I really am. That's just so awesome. And I want to know, Shaler, at the end of this, if you've discovered how caring you really are. Anyway, my name is Kimberly. I'm here to just keep this conversation going. Please put your questions into the chat box. We love hearing from you. Let's get started. I want to hear from everybody. What's the first thing that comes to mind when you think of the word caregiving or caregiver? Elizabeth, I'd love for you to jump in, and it doesn't have to be one word, but just what comes to mind, and it can be abstract or literal.
Guilt.
Guilt.
I feel so guilty. David has to curtail his ambitions because of me. I feel tremendous guilt.
Kyle, you nodded.
Yeah, I feel guilty always asking for help. People say, just ask for help when you need it. But when I do, I just feel guilty. I feel like I'm burdening them, just getting in their way.
Annie, what about you? You do both. You're on both sides.
Well, my mind immediately went to thinking about my work, my professional life as a caregiver. And then I was thinking about compassion and how sometimes when I get home, I have compassion fatigue for the people that I live with because I've been giving out care all day. And that nourishes me to care for others, but I also sometimes do feel drained and don't have as much from my family. And that's interesting. I have it for my kids. I think the one who suffers the most is my husband, because I'm like, you're a grown up, you can do it. But it depends. But it is interesting. Like my mind went to the caretaking role rather than the care receiving role. And I think I am very bad at accepting caretaking myself. I'm not good at that. So I don't think guilt. I think I'm fine. I don't need it. I'm good. I'm good. And I'm lucky in that I've been able to mostly do that in my life, but not always. And certainly I do think it's a strength to be able to receive care from others. And it's something I'm working on.
Well said. Shaylor, what about you? You know both ends of the spectrum too.
Yeah, I'm with Elizabeth and Kyle on the when I'm receiving care, guilt is the first thing that come. I just don't want anybody to have to be inconveniencing themselves and catering to me. But on the giving care side, what has surprised me so much about this experience I'm in now, it's layered emotions. There's not one word. You can't say compassion without also saying resentment. You can't say sympathy without also saying anger. That's the part that scares me about it. It's not one layer. And you ease into it, you find a pattern, the pattern changes over time. But I guess my one word answer would be double layered. Or multi-layered.
I sort of think that's like acknowledging that is really the only way to avoid like getting completely burned out by caretaking, right? To be honest about that, because if we don't acknowledge the resentment and the other conflicting feelings, then they can build up a lot, I think.
I want to know what it's like for, let's say you're in a moment of higher symptoms, and I'm speaking to all of you. And then your caregiver walks in the room and says, I need some me time today. And it's not like, snappy. It's just like, I'm overwhelmed. I need some me time today. Well, how does that land with you?
I would like that. I like being alone. And usually if I'm having a heavy symptom day, solitude is what helps me.
So if your caregiver said, I need some me time, you would understand?
Like good. Take care of yourself.
Yeah. I think I would like it too. Yeah. In theory, I can imagine in the moment maybe being annoyed, but then if I were to reflect on it, thinking, actually, if I'm going to let someone take care of me, which I am terrible at, I want to know that they're going to be honest with me, totally straightforward of when they want to and when they don't, and what they need and what they don't need, because that would alleviate my guilt. That would help me not feel guilty if I can trust that they're going to ask for what they need.
I wish I could be that generous and clear but I need water, for example, or I need to blow my nose,
Mm.
or I need to go to the bathroom. So I can say, oh, take the day off, David. I love you to go exercise, take a bike ride, but if we're here alone, it's not doable.
Right.
No matter how generous I appear to be. And it's just really, really hard.
Yeah. And I can imagine really scary. Like if you don't
Mhm.
have someone there to help you with those things that you need.
Shayla, you've been in that situation with your husband recently where I'm sure he's needed like very strong physical needs, and you're going, I desperately need a break. How do you, what's going on with you in that situation?
That's true. In the beginning, when he was still really in crisis and in a lot of pain with his injury, I wasn't sleeping. I forgot to eat. I didn't take a shower for 2 days. I could not stop thinking about him at all. And it took it, it was I think it was the 5th day before I finally got out and went for a walk. But I was scared the whole time. I was had texting him on the phone, are you okay, are you okay, are you okay? So it was filled with a lot of worry. But I'm thinking back to one time when I was in my mother's care, and I love being alone. I'm like Kyle. I'm very happy. I've been fortunate. I haven't needed constant care ever, so I do fine when I'm on my own a lot. But there was one time she was caring for me when I was in a bad way, and she got up and went to Florida for 3 months.
Mm.
It wasn't just going out for a walk. She always went to Florida for the winter. And I just guess I thought somehow that she would stay home this time because I had a young child and I wasn't doing well. And she went to Florida. I felt so abandoned. I was so angry. I didn't ever tell her that, but it came out in my attitude toward her, when we talked on the phone. So that's sort of the opposite end of the scale, I guess, getting angry at your caregiver for going away.
Mm.
Yeah.
She must know my father. Your mother, yeah, they must be friends down in Florida.
He goes
Just
too.
abandoning and yeah.
Did you feel that too, Kyle? When you were in a moment of need, did your dad exit?
The day I got the news that this was MS, and I wasn't even 21 yet, and I remember calling him and just sobbing, and he said, "What do you need? What do you need?" I said, I just need you to come up here. I need my family around me. Like I need support." And he was like, "All right, I'll be up there. I'll be up there soon. I'll be up there as soon as I can." And I couldn't get a hold of him a couple weeks after that. And I call his restaurant and they're like, "Oh, he's in Mexico on vacation." Like, oh, okay.
Wow.
I don't know. I haven't seen him in 6 years. We used to have a great relationship, but yeah, it feels very much like abandonment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kyle, I can relate to that like so much, not even around my health issues, but with abandonment from my dad, like at a very young age, just like
Yeah.
gone from my life. And when I had reached out once in my older years after, being, not connected for a long time, and asked like, can we make a relationship? And he said, I don't have time for one more thing on my plate. Right. So like that abandonment, is really strong in me. And I think that is, where I started of saying like, I'm very bad at asking for care. Sometimes like
Mm.
I'm afraid to get rejected, I guess, but also I find I want to take up as little space as possible. and
Yeah.
be like the least amount of a burden that I possibly can be, and
Yeah.
just kind of like be invisible. Yeah.
Me too. And it's so hard because I need more and more and more as my health just gets, it's so fucking progressive and just moving so fast.
Yeah.
So it's hard to have those two things, want to be invisible and not in the
Absolutely.
way at
And you
all.
can't
And
be. Yeah. And then you can't be. Yeah.
it's tough.
Kyle, can I ask you? Oh, go ahead, Elizabeth.
Just gonna say, Kyle, the anger you must have at your father. I'm angry. I want to yell at him right now.
Well, I'll
Just-
tell you, I did hold on to that anger for so long. But I feel like I've let go a lot of it after going through a good bit of therapy last year and just being able to, I don't know, unpack all of that stuff. And I'm not angry. It's sad. It just makes me sad.
Yeah.
Which is that any better?
Yeah. Well, the opposite of that is when someone shows up and doesn't abandon. And I'm curious, like, have you experienced, I know you've had a very positive partnership over the last couple of years. Is Jonathan in your life right now?
He
And how
is.
has that changed things for you around trusting that someone isn't going to abandon?
I have some serious abandonment issues. I expressed that early on in our relationship, and it's I don't know, it's deeply ingrained in me, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm.
So Shaylor, you didn't abandon your husband when this happened, and I'm sure there were
Yeah.
moments where you were like, "I'm out of here. This is just crazy." What has ensued in your relationship? Has he been able to express his experience of you being by his side through this? What's that been like for your relationship?
That's a good question. And actually, I asked him, knowing we were all meeting today, I said, is there anything that you'd like me to say? Maybe write down some things that, some thoughts from your side. And he had a really tough time. He is not a writer. He's a mechanical. His intelligence is mechanical intelligence, and putting emotions into words were not his thing. But the way he expresses it in other ways, he expresses it just by giving me an extra long hug when we finally settle down to sleep, or just he's been saying a lot how pretty I look. And, we've been together 23 years, and I know there have been many days where I did not look pretty. I was a wreck and ragged, and he just finds something to compliment me about. So it's not the words, and it's not the deep emotional conversations that I like to have, but he does it in his own way.
Mm-hmm. How has that felt for your relationship then? Does you being his caregiver, has it changed some of the dynamics of how you love each other? And even after he's better, will that change moving forward?
Well, that chapter's yet to be written, but I'm banking on we're finding our way back to each other on a deeper level.
Mm-hmm.
We've both seen fear and ugliness and frustration and boredom, as well as great, milestones and triumphs. But all of that other stuff we've shared, and we've been kind of trapped in a very small space together. It was kind of like, during COVID when we were all in isolation.
I was going to say very similar.
Yeah, it is, except he never was in that. He cannot sit still. So having to stay in one place, he's an airline pilot, and that he was an essential worker. So he never stayed home. He worked through the whole pandemic. So even being home for 4 days in a row is very frustrating for him.
So that's a
Um,
huge change.
huge,
Yeah.
huge. And the place that he sits, that I had to set up as his kind of command center with all of his mobility aids and his cooling machine for his leg and all that stuff, that's the chair I use to write in. So every time I looked at him, it's like, oh, it's my space. Oh my
Yes.
God, where am I supposed to go? So
Yeah.
wow. But I think that we have been having deeper conversations, and one thing that I'm very proud of him of is he realized he was in trouble emotionally and holding in a lot of anger. In our situation, he also lost income. I mean, he's on disability, so it's financially difficult also. And he is not. He's seen two therapists. They both have very different styles, but I pushed really hard to get him to consider it because he's never done anything like that. And I'm so proud of him. I'm so proud of him. He's sticking with it. He's getting something out of it. And, you know, we don't obviously discuss what he talks about with him, but he does sometimes say, you know what? I opened up. I opened up. And I think that's something he's always wanted to do. And maybe this experience is helping him cross that threshold a little bit. You know, if there's a good side to this, that's one of the good sides, is getting more in touch with your emotions.
Wow. Wow. Elizabeth, what are your thoughts on abandonment? I'm thinking about you as Shaler's talking, and you know, your relationship with David is also decades in, and he's seen you go through a lot. What's your experience with David, and how has your relationship changed?
Our relationship has changed 100%
Mhm.
because we were equal in our income salaries, and we tried to be equal in terms of our caregiving responsibilities with our kids. And now I'm can't make money. I well, you couldn't make money in terms of SSI, and it's like don't want to make my artwork commercial. I don't think I could do it. So I feel like very ripped of any power. I felt very equal and powerful, and now I don't. And that's been really hard. It's been hard for David.
Elizabeth, do you guys talk about that?
Every day in some argument or spat.
Mm.
We're always we're doing well, but it doesn't mean we don't have arguments once or twice, 4 times a day. We try to do all the things in terms of expressing our feelings and emotions, but we don't really. I think it's just human.
Yeah, it's very human.
Can I ask, like, and you don't have to answer this, but like today specifically, are your spats around like needs needing to get met, like the details of navigating throughout the day, or like where do they tend to originate?
Well, because I can't operate the computer, can't type, David stuck with a lot of upkeep in terms of my medical reports and appointments. And David says, I'm not your secretary. Figure it out. I'm not your secretary. I'm not your boy. He says that. I'm not your boy. And I think understand why he says that. 'Cause he feels like I have my own needs, and I always take priority. He presents, which I totally understand. But it's it's not a pretty picture for
Yeah.
anyone. And I think I have the best situation in the world, but it's not a pretty picture for anyone. It's just the pressures of trying to be. I love how you nod and approval. Shayla, I really thank you for being so supportive. It's just hard.
Mhm. Yeah. Shaler, you wrote in your ebook that you were secretary, just like your husband David said, I'm not your secretary. You've become his chauffeur, you've become his gentleman, you've
Mm-hmm.
become his nurse. So I can see the predicament there, because in a way, your husband is your secretary. Who else is going to handle that? Right?
Mm,
So that's a tricky one to resolve. Like you
Right.
said, it's just very difficult.
I
yeah.
think it's especially hard when it's a family member, and family caregiving, because it's clear when it's a job, there's clearer boundaries. But if it's
Mhm.
someone you love and you're intimate with, you don't want it to ever feel like a job. And yet it is a job, but you want to do it in a loving way. And the boundaries, I think, get blurred much more easily that way.
Definitely. What about, I'm curious for Elizabeth and Shaler in particular, because you've been doing this major caretaking. Are you able to fold in other people? I know you have some other caregivers, Elizabeth. I know that can be a financial burden, but I'm just thinking maybe idealistically, but like, I think as a society, we're all not very good at asking for help, just in general in our culture, right? And I do think sometimes I wish that we were more community minded in that way, and that we could all be helping each other and knocking on each other's doors and giving more of ourselves. And we don't live in such a world right now. But have you been able to fold in friends? Obviously, it's complicated because the person who's needing the care needs to feel very comfortable with that person. And it's just complicated. But I'm wondering, like, if you've had experience with that, but either of you, just having other caretakers involved from different perspectives. You, Elizabeth, as the one being cared for, and you, Shaler, as one of the caretakers.
Well, I have one of my caretakers sitting right next to me. She's wonderful. I love her, but she's only here 9 to 5, and she can't do everything. And she can't. I have such complicated medical situations, and I have so many doctors and so much to work out. Just really hard. It really means David is wonderful. He really knows all the physicians, and he can coordinate, but he resents it too. It's wonderful, but he resents it, and he doesn't want to resent it. Just not a really good thing for a marriage.
Mhm.
And I think just something we have to learn.
It sounds like there's no matter how much of the community you can rally and bring in as extra caregivers and support, there's no way for that primary relationship to fully step out, because they're going to, it would be like the CEO leaving, there still needs to be somebody that at least is coordinating all the other people.
That's so intuitive, Kimberly.
Yeah.
That's really intuitive.
I think it's important what you said about you have to keep the situation separate from the person. And it's hard to do that in the moment. It's much easier
Really
to
hard.
do that in reflection. In my case, because I know there's going to be an end to mine, it's only been my fault. All of our neighbors have, what can I do? What can I do? What can I bring over? Do you want to get out? Can I take you somewhere? My mom's offered to, take me out to the movies or take me on a trip. And I've said no. I guess it's hard to ask for help. It's really, it's hard to ask for help. And I guess in some level, I feel like that's admitting that I'm failing in some way. And I know I'm not failing, but some part of me perceives it as a sign of weakness if I say I need a break.
Right.
Mm.
In my case, my two sisters go away and don't invite me because it's too hard. It's too hard for them, I think, because of my disability. They want to be free to have a wonderful vacation without the headache of stairs and all the other accommodations that I absolutely need. So, and my friends, I have the most wonderful friends in the world, but no one's invited me to go on vacation with them, which I would love. But that's a big hassle, and it's a big ask.
Mhm.
I would never ask them, and they don't volunteer, which I totally get.
Ah, you can get, but you can also grieve.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I do
I feel that.
grieve. I
Yeah.
grieve because it makes me. I have to be more generous with other people who don't want to travel with me, and so that I really understand their point of view, and I want to be the better person. I'm always thinking if I need to meditate more, and this is hard.
Yeah. I want to bring in a question from somebody that's Jocelyn, and this isn't so much a question, but a reflection, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. She says she doesn't have a caregiver. I'm assuming maybe she has MS. I live on my own, but know I need one eventually. This worries me a bit as I have a limited income. So maybe this is kind of addressing what you were talking about, Annie, of where do those caregivers come from and how do we integrate them? But do you guys have any experiences to reflect on that or some thoughts for Jocelyn?
Well, first of all, it sounds really scary I mean, I think for all of us to think that way of needing, if we get to a place of needing the help, and Elizabeth, you're already there, but
It's scary.
and the income factor is huge. And again, my idealistic mind goes to like, we need societally to think of more outside of the box solutions. And, I don't know, but like, I've heard younger people talking more about like co-housing or living more in community with their friends and not just in a partnership. I just think culturally, I hope we can start thinking more like that so that we can help each other, because I think, there are lots of people who are getting old alone, even if they don't have a chronic health condition, who aren't getting the help they need or aren't getting people around them. And I think it's just really sad and scary for a lot of people. So I don't have any answer, but that's my hope.
Well, if it's not scary now, it will be at some time in their lifetime, our lifetime. Losing your hearing, losing your knee function. I have a number of friends who have hearing aids now have recuperating from joint replacements. I'm at the age where just about everyone are teetering with getting more assistance
Yeah.
or not.
Yeah. And our medical system doesn't do such a good job on that in that way. I don't think of like helping people beyond just that medical appointment and thinking, what do people really need? I was just thinking the other day about this incident I had maybe 10 years ago where I was working in an urgent care clinic. Anyway, I'd worked there for years, but I started getting letters from this elderly woman, like handwritten letters, and I got like at least one or two a week for a long period of time. She was in her late 80s. She was living alone. She'd read an article that I'd written. I'd never seen her as a patient, but they were really sad. And she'd write about how she was alone and she had no help and her kids weren't around and she couldn't do this and that for her. She had Parkinson's. I don't know. It was just really painful. And I called her back because she put her phone number and we had a number of conversations. And really, I was just saying to her, like, why don't you come into the clinic, or do you have a primary care doctor? Turns out she did. I called that person. I tried to get her connected. I tried to call her son with her permission. And then I got like in big trouble. I got reprimanded by my boss at work because they were like, how could you, that is a legal risk you're taking on and you shouldn't have been calling her. And that is, you're putting yourself at risk for litigation and do not contact her again, which I thought just broke my heart. I thought this
That's
is so
heartless.
painful, right? That this woman who just, I saved all her letters. I still have them. Anyway, it just broke my heart about how the system's so broken that way, right? That I was
Yeah,
actually told, don't do something kind because you might get in legal trouble.
Oh,
heartless.
Awful. Awful.
yeah. It is interesting how we have to bypass the medical system in order to get our needs met often. I'm thinking of my mom in the beginning of June. She fell and she's just been broken bone after broken bone these last few years. And she broke her pelvis and 2 ribs, but didn't know it, oddly enough, and felt pain like a week later. My brother and I, coincidentally, both had vacations planned for the week that she found out that she actually had these fractures and she had to be more on bed rest. So we planned these trips for a year. And she, in her own way, was kind of like, what am I gonna do? And my brother and I were like, Mom, I think you've got lots of care people. You've got people that love you. She's an extrovert. She's got lots of friends. Can we just rally on some of the people that are already there and still go on with our vacations? And okay. So she ended up putting an email out to all of her friends. And for 3 weeks, man, I don't think she even had to get off of her sofa. She had like friends coming with meals,
I
and
love that. I love that.
she has
Yeah.
this little porcelain cup that I would drink tea out of, but now I don't because she pees in it. She like puts it next to her sofa so she doesn't even have to get up. It's like she just rallied and got all the things that she needed, and the friends, and no, it wasn't one consistent caregiver, but humans know how to show up, I think, when that request is made.
When that's made, I think that, first of all, it's so brave of her that she put that request out there. Second, I think we often forget that like it actually feels good to be one of those people that's asked to help. It's much different than being the primary caretaker where you're there all the time. But if you can do a small thing to really make someone's day better, people really feel good about that.
Yes.
So it can be a gift to them to allow someone to help, but we're not structured that way.
Yeah.
And with MS and being secondary progressive MS for many, many years, I've been so lucky. But people are burned out. I mean, there's only so much you want to give to someone who keeps living. I'm not dying, so thank goodness. I'm joyous because I have great health, but I'm gonna need care all the time.
Yeah, it's easy for people to rally for a couple weeks, but when you're
Right.
talking about a couple decades, that's
Yeah.
a whole different ball game.
You mentioned, Kimberly, your mom, you called her an extrovert, and that brings something up that I've been thinking about a lot. There's actually a caregiving personality type in the Myers-Briggs protocol. The caregiver personality is an extrovert, among other things. And I was thinking, wow, I am such an introvert. You know, that could be why I have such problems with this. But whether you're receiving care or giving the care, I think you're better off. It's easier to ask for help when you're an extrovert. When you're an introvert, it's hard to ask. It's hard to tolerate having people around a lot of the time. And and when you're giving care, you don't get enough time for yourself if you're an introvert. So being an introvert and in the caregiving mode, it has its own additional challenges, I think. I mean, I think it probably helped your mom that she was an extrovert and that she had a large circle of friends, and that was something might have been hard for her, but it'd be a lot harder for me.
Oh man, 1000% agree with you, Shaler. Yeah, my story would be very different if I were on the sofa. I'd be like texting 3 people that aren't even in the state. You know? Shaler, I love that you brought that up. And I heard you say not so many experience of this. Because when I'm hearing you, I'm like, wow, she's a great caregiver. Look at all the things that she's done.
So a lot of it is the timing when this happened. All right. I'm an introvert. I'm a writer. I'm in a phase. My son moved out. We moved our only child into his own apartment the day before my husband had his accident. And so had the whole empty nest thing going on. But I was going to fill that void with the energy of really focusing on my writing. I was just going to dive in, and this was going to be when I could give it 4 hours a day and finally have my time to myself. And guess what? Guess how much time I've had to myself. You know? And not only that, I mean, my husband's an airline pilot, and so part of what makes our marriage work is that I'm an introvert and he's gone at least 4 days a week. So that's my recharging time. I mean, it may sound like we don't like to be together, but it works really well for me because I get enough of the me time. And that's been my biggest source of frustration in this experience is if it were going to go on for a lifetime, and we probably will face that someday as we age. I mean, another thing I'm learning from this experience is, hey, you know, we're going to face this again as we get older, whether you have an injury or an illness or not. We're going to probably be in a small space together, spending a lot more time and having to help each other do very simple things. And I honestly don't know how I'm going to handle it long term. I think it's going to be very important to have discussions about boundaries in personal space.
Yeah. And Shaler, it makes me want to ask, like, have you found new ways to recharge? Because I'm totally with you. I'm an introvert. I need that alone time to recharge. But if you don't get it, like, are there other ways you have found things you can do to recharge yourself a little bit?
I get up before my husband does. He's a much better sleeper than I am. So I take my walk, and I'll walk for like an hour and a half down to the nearest place where I can see the water and walk back. And I spend a lot of time. Nature recharges me. For me, I get out, and if I'm early enough, you know, the deer are still out and I can see a fox and the hawks are up above, and all of that just reminds me that there's a rhythm to life that's going on, even though I feel like I'm stuck and standing still, that it's still happening. And I think I'm lucky that way because it's free and it's easy and it works for me.
Mm. Wow. I love that. What about the rest of you guys? Kyle, I haven't heard much from you today. I want to know where your head, heart are with this discussion.
It's interesting. I don't know, like my current, I don't like thinking of my partner as a primary caregiver. He is here the most and he does a lot for me, but I don't want that. I don't want him to feel like he is a primary caregiver, like he is my caregiver. I don't want that to, I don't want to lose that independence. I've talked about that before. But I've already lost so much. But it's weird. I don't feel like I'm allowed to be a caregiver. Nobody asks me for help. So
Do you want to be asked?
sure.
I'm going
I'd
to
like-
call you next week and be like, Kyle, I need some advice.
I would like that.
Okay.
That's cool. What an interesting thought, Kyle.
It's
Yeah.
just nice to feel needed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It surprises me to hear that, because you would be such a wonderful mentor to so many people who are beginning their journey.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for saying that. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah.
That it could happen.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Well, and you were in a way on your Instagram community, Kyle. I mean, you were providing a resource for a lot of people when you
I
were
have just fallen off of that. I'm trying to keep up with just a couple social media posts for my new business that we just started.
Yeah.
I'm just having a hard time keeping up with anything these days.
Yeah. Nor do you need to, you don't need to manage that. I'm just saying, like, I think you're right, Shayla. You have it in you, Kyle, to be an amazing mentor.
Well, I watched the video you posted of skydiving.
Oh yeah,
Come on. Oh my God. That is so inspirational. That is so
Oh,
awesome and cool.
I want to go again.
Oh,
Oh,
geez. Kyle,
Were
I'm
you
never doing
scared?
that.
It was so cool. Okay, so Jonathan, he was like, "Oh hell no, there is no way I'm gonna go skydiving." But me and my friends, he came with us, and we all jump out of the plane. And when we get down to the ground, he was like, "Damn, I kind of want to go now."
Okay. Interesting.
So you went again. So did you go back up and go with him, or there was just one jump that day?
Just one jump that day.
Okay, so who's going to go next time?
So he says.
I like it.
Was this your idea, Kyle?
I went skydiving on my 18th birthday, 15 years ago. And I've talked about it with my friends, my good friends. They used to be my neighbors. They used to be a good part of they weren't my caregivers, but they provided so much care for me, and still do. They're the village that takes care of me. But Sierra, okay. Sorry, I'm all over the place. Me and this family, we all have birthdays within like a week of each other, and we celebrate every year. And this year, Sierra, she took us skydiving, and her son was turning 18 when we went skydiving. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you're reluctant to use the word caregiver. And I'm not making a judgment on that. I'm just saying I like that there's a reluctance to that, because in a way, it's like you don't want to call your friends caregivers because they're your friends, and friends are supposed to show up when you're in need, right? So
I feel like they are my caregivers. They might see themselves as such, which is good. I don't want them to think of themselves as my caregiver.
Yeah.
They have cared for me so much. They are the reason why I'm still here. Seriously.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's important, like, I totally get that sort of guilt feeling of not wanting to have people take care of me, or right in your relationship, Kyle, not wanting to think of Jonathan as your caretaker. Like that would be very uncomfortable for me. But well, first of all, two thoughts. One is like, I feel like we all need to practice asking for help. I do. I feel like that's my goal. I want to start working on that. But also
Yeah.
to think about what is the reciprocity. I think in any relationship,
Yes.
there has to be but there, I'm sure there still is. Like Elizabeth, even in your David does so much for you, I know, but I'm sure that
Reciprocity without resentment.
yes, but I'm sure you're giving back to him in some ways that maybe are harder to identify or see clearly. But I think that, I don't know, we should all think about that. Even if someone's helping us, maybe what are we doing to help them? Because I'm sure that there are things, and it's that back and forth, and it can feel so out of balance, and it is sometimes, right? But, you know, in concrete ways, for sure, David is doing more for you, but I'm sure there are things, I'm just talking out loud, but.
No, I love this. I feel like this is an excellent way to close this conversation. I want to ask every one of you where the reciprocity is. Elizabeth, what are you giving David?
I don't know. I really don't know. I can fantasize. I'm giving him the perspective of joy and enthusiasm for life, which David, I think, feels sort of downtrodden with as total burden of a caregiver. But I don't know.
Couples counseling it really helps. First of all, thank goodness Jonathan. I suggested that we do something like that, and he said absolutely. I think it'd be good for us, just as far as communication and figuring this out.
And did you feel the therapist thought you would need a defense? Or...
I didn't feel like the therapist took one side or the other. I thought they were very neutral. And honestly, when Jonathan was talking about his issues, she definitely amplified that in a way that made me understand it. So I thought it was, I totally advocate for couples therapy.
Same, especially if it's a good therapist, right? And if it's the right therapist, then they're going to not pick sides, because that would be a bad therapist.
Yeah. It might take a little shopping for the right therapist, but the right therapist is absolutely going to try to understand both experiences and see them as both valid.
Well, they both, I think the psychological aspect of caregiving and receiving care is not talked about enough.
Yeah.
And my husband was not interested in therapy. We did meet with one of the doctors he sees is my psychiatrist. I've been in therapy since I was 19 years old. I'm just a big believer in it. But
Me too.
I got him. Yeah, it helps. I'm also a believer in functional medicine. I know you believe in that, but I got him we started off together, and he was really afraid that he wasn't going to be heard, and that he was going to be made out to be a bad guy because this accident was a little bit reckless and thoughtless, and maybe a little bit of a midlife crisis thing that, you know, there's that aspect to it. He was on an electric skateboard going down a very steep hill way too fast. There might have been a little showing off involved. I'm not sure, but you know,
I get resentment then.
but the therapist put him right at ease. And I mean, if maybe a good way to start would be just to have him come in for 10 minutes at the end of a session, you know, ease into it and just kind of talk about something simple, so it doesn't feel as big of a commitment. I've done that too when I've been in when I've had when my son was having problems. We had him come in just for the last 15 minutes. So he didn't feel as threatened, and he sort of built up his own relationship from there. But I'd say still advocate for it. But another, still on that psychological aspect of caregiving and care receiving, something that I've been thinking about a lot is how whole experience is teaching me a much deeper way to love and a new way to empathize.
Right.
And in family caregiving, it really is, it's a deep layer of love. And I have the connection between caregiving and love. I was talking about that with my writing partner, as I'm drafting this book along, and she's a wonderfully insightful person. And she's a depth psychologist. Her name's Elizabeth Nelson. And I just want to read you. This is what she said to me just off the cuff. I wrote it down because it was so good. She said, in my opinion, the entire basis for loving someone is the ability to see the world as they see it and live in it, and treat their experience with care and tenderness, especially when it's not our own experience.
Oh, that's so profound.
Isn't
I
it?
love- yeah.
It just rolled out, and I was like, wow, that's pretty much, I think, what we're here on earth to do.
Yeah.
So I don't know, maybe caregiving can take us to that higher purpose where we can actually cross the threshold to something that some people go through life and never do, but I think you can get to that level if you think of caregiving as part of loving, another layer of loving.
Well, and to take that even one step further, since we are also patients and being cared for, it might be another version of that loving is to see what that other person's experience is, like your writing partner said, to really step inside David's experience and to hold his experience as true, or Jonathan's, to hold his experience as true as much as your experience, and to see from both sides. It's hard to do, but wow.
Well, Annie, in narrative medicine, do you ever instruct people to imagine the other side? I mean, that'd be a good writing exercise too.
Yeah, it's a great writing exercise. I mean, the closest we get to that is we have sessions where we'll have both two different people, whether it's a care provider and a patient, or a mother and a son, or a husband and a wife, whatever, share their stories side by side. So we work with them each independently and craft their narratives, and then they come together having not heard the other side. And so creating sort of a sacred space for them to each share their experiences, and then we usually start with giving them, when they're both done, a chance to respond to one another. And it opens that conversation, because I think to have the time and the space to tell your own version without someone interrupting, and then have it witnessed by the other can do that.
Yeah. I've watched a few of those videos on your website on Health Story Collaborative. It's really moving. It's really moving when they both hear each other's story. And I think you're very right about being uninterrupted too. I think that's an important part of it.
Definitely. Thanks, Sheila.
Wow. Guys, it's 2:01. I want to just end. I want to circle back to reciprocity. And Elizabeth, I'll give you a second chance to answer it. And even if you still say, I don't know, that's fine too. But I want to hear, whether you're from the caregiving perspective or care receiving perspective, what are you offering that person?
I really don't know, except my love. I'm a quadriplegic, so I can't basically do anything.
It's no small thing, Elizabeth.
Yeah, that's huge. I think love. I love ending on the love. I love what you just read, Shaler, and love. And so I like to think of, like, when I'm caretaking someone else, I'm giving them compassion and my love, hopefully trying to see their experience. But the flip side is letting someone caretake me, which I'm not very good at. It's giving them an opportunity to love me, and it can give someone a sense of purpose, I think, a higher purpose. And I think that's something.
Yeah, that really is.
Kyle, what about you?
I don't really know what I give my caregiver. Maybe a lot of fun experiences. I'm pretty fun.
You are.
So I
You
give
are fun.
add fun to his life or whoever's taking care of me.
Mm.
I think I give my husband courage to be vulnerable, and I'm
Mhm.
by being vulnerable myself, because I think he especially needs that with all of the frustrations and pain and anger he has at himself too.
Mm.
So I think creating a space where vulnerability is welcome. That's what we give each other.
Well put.
So profound. This episode, I think, needs to be heard by millions. I mean, this is just, there's just such deep wisdom in here. Whew. Thank you guys. Oh, Lisa, hi.
I have so much to say, but we're out of time. Like, I have been biting my typing tongue for like, I can't even tell you how long.
Do you have something that just have to share or
Well,
add?
first of all, my observation is that for some reason, what I'm observing and hearing is it sounds like caregiving is a dirty word. And I'm just wondering if there's a way to reframe that. Number two, the idea that your worth is in your physical body
Mm.
and you should feel guilty for that is, I know this is easier said than done, but that's ridiculous. That is this is our vehicle, right? And it may not be perfect. And yes, if you have a car that constantly needs, tires changed or pumped up or whatever through no fault of your own, I think that as a society, we need to be more comfortable asking each other for help and care without feeling guilty about it or it being weird or and I know this is a personal perspective, but working with Elizabeth, she gives so much that I don't think you're even aware of. So you do reciprocate, at least. I can't speak for David or anybody in your family, but I know, and I've observed it with other people, that your countenance and your ability to have a self-deprecating sense of humor about the situations we're in when we can't do anything about it, I think is really profound. And as somebody who took care of her dad when he had dementia, we are human beings. We get tired. It didn't matter how much I wanted to care for him. Sometimes I was just tired. And I too, Shaler, am an introvert. And he was pretty demanding. Some of that was from the dementia itself. Some of it was just him. But I felt tired. And sometimes I was annoyed with him, but I never felt pissed off. I could feel upset with him in the moment, like, stop being such a jerk, and I'm not going to do that for you right now. But that had nothing to do with his dementia, or that was just, we're all imperfect. People ask for help all the time or don't ask for help in other situations. And I feel like everybody's experience here, it's just one more layer, I know. But the thing that I was just like, maybe we need to have an episode about this, about MS or disability or chronic illness, dirty words. Because I feel like caregiving, like, as I heard all of you speak, it's like this dirty word. We don't want to say it. We don't want to talk about it. It's like a word we shouldn't say. And I'm just wondering, I'm like, are there other dirty words that you guys don't want to say? So I hope that this will maybe change a little bit the perception of what caregiving or caretaking, like, those words are so complicated, like taking, caretaking.
Yeah.
Thing. And it's not like you need to have a euphemism for everything, but I don't know. I was just listening to you all and I'm like, it feels like a dirty word.
Let's remove the
It's
giving
like-
and receiving out of it and just call it caring.
Yeah.
Either
like
way, if you're receiving or giving, you're just caring. You're caring about your life. Period.
Yep.
Well, that's your title for this. I care, you care, we care. We all care.
And I also realized that maybe I need to do a better job of like, because Kyle, when you were saying, how can you reciprocate? Maybe I know how you guys reciprocate, but I don't verbalize it. Maybe I don't verbalize it to Elizabeth, and maybe I need to do a better job of verbalizing how that reciprocity can happen. So,
Very good.
because I know you guys do it, it's just maybe you don't know that you do it because we don't say anything. So anyway, that was a big long run of me running off, but I just I think this is a very important topic, and yeah.
Thanks, Lisa.
Yeah.
That chock full of wisdom. That wasn't running off at all. That was like writing a prologue to an epic novel. That was really good. I don't know if I need to rehash on some of the points we talked on because there was so much. I wrote everything down. Maybe I'll just put them in the notes for you guys if you want to take a look at that. But then here they are. But I just want to say thank you guys. We've gone over time, and I think we could do 2 hours on this topic. And I want to reiterate for myself how much you reciprocate to me. I know I'm not your daily caregiver, but you caretake my heart and my perspective on life through all of its challenges in such a profound way, like changed my life kind of way, all of you. So with that, Lisa, thank you for everything you do behind the scenes and in front. And Shaler, awesome. What a blessing to have you with us. When your book is out, please to let us know so we can put it in on the YouTube notes so people can know where to link to it, because even what you sent, the PDF, awesome, really important wisdom in there. So people
It's wonderful to hear.
So too, tremendous wisdom.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you all for having me.
Thank you.
It's been so nice to talk about this.
Good.
And I agree, it's needed. It's needed.
And I think we can all we should all commit to caring for each other and asking for help when we need it. Because I think we're all here for each other.
Yeah. Kyle, I'm going to text you right now and ask you for help.
Okay.
All right, I gotta go make dinner. It's 5
Me
o'clock.
too.
All right, bye guys.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you again. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Bye.